very quickly, we're going to go through the rules here before I introduce the candidates. We'll have, it's going to move quickly, 2-minute opening statements, 90-second responses to questions, and then 2-minute closing statements. It's that quickly. So from my right, your left, number 1, Robert Klingenberg. Number 2, Josh Svaty. Number 3, Arden Andersen. Number 4, Mayor Carl Brewer, former Mayor Carl Brewer. Number 5 down there, we've got Representative Jim Ward. Number 6, Jack Bergeson. And number 7, Senator Laura Kelly. Welcome to Mayor. Now, starting with Robert Klingenberg, we're going to go through opening statements, 2 minutes each. Robert, you're 4.
Hello, and as said, my name is Robert Klingenberg. I am 27 years old and I'm from Salina, Kansas. I am a first-generation Mexican-American, and I'm here today to bring the voice of the working class up to the governor's office. I'm here today to give a voice to these people because I feel that the working class is often underrepresented in state government, and I bring with me a knowledge of the problems that everyday Kansans face. So with that said, I'm here because somewhere in the state of Kansas, somebody's working 2 or 3 jobs just to get by. I'm here because somewhere in the state of Kansas, somebody is deciding whether to pay their bills or to put food on their table. I'm here because somebody somewhere in the state of Kansas cannot afford the medication they need to survive, or the cost is far out of their reach. So with that said, the message that I'm trying to send with my campaign is that somebody is here that understands. So my name is Robert Klingenberg, and I look forward to answering the questions presented today. Thank you.
I grew up on a farm just outside of Ellsworth, Kansas. My family's been farming there since the 1860s. When my grandparents sent my dad to school, the teachers called him a blow-sand kid because he was one of the poor bohemians that farmed hillsides that blew like sand. My family's always been Democratic because we've always fought for the blow-sand kids, whether they're in downtown Wyandotte County or on the Southern Plains. But all of us up here are Democrats. And this forum can't be about who is more Democratic than the other. This forum has to be about who can win this election in November 2018 and build a party that can win again in 2020 and in 2022. And the 5-county strategy that this party's been engaging with for the past few election cycles has been failing. We have to speak to that single mother in Sharon Springs, Kansas, working 2 jobs and say the Democratic Party cares about you. We have to speak to the retired veteran in Medicine Lodge struggling to get health care and say the Democratic Party cares about you. We have to speak to students in Lawrence that walk out of their school for better gun laws and say the Democratic Party cares about you. And we have to do it in a way so that they know that we have the energy and the excitement to get it done and actually win an election so we can put our ideas into law. My strategy has always been a Bob-docking strategy, build this county, to build this party, county by county, all across the state so that we've got a bench to take advantage of when we've got a year like 2018 when we can actually win. Thank you.
Mr. Anderson. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here. I am a colonel in the Air Force Reserves, been deployed 3 times. As well, I am a farmer. I grew up on a small dairy farm in Michigan, and some of you have heard a little bit about suicide rates now that are hitting the dairy farmers, particularly because of low prices and farm issues. I'm also a teacher. I was a vocational agriculture teacher first, and then I went to medical school and became a physician. I practice in Leavenworth. About 1/3 of my patients are Medicaid, Medicare. I understand what it takes in order to solve these issues. Unlike any other candidate, I'm actually addressing the causes of the issues. We talk about overhauling healthcare, not just expanding a system that's broke. We actually have to overhaul it in order to solve the problem so that we can extend it then to 370,000 more Kansans, not just 100 and some thousand. In addition, education. All you hear about is, oh, we need to put more money into it. Nobody's talking about 26% of the children now are developmental delay. That's twice what it was in the 90s. And if you look at the curve, 50% of our children will be developmental delay and special needs in the next 10 to 15 years. How are you going to fund that? Because it is a federal mandate, not just a state mandate. A federal mandate, you have to fund special needs. Where are you going to get the money? Number two, what are you going to do to actually solve why we have all these special needs children and address the environmental issues? Same thing with agriculture, same thing with infrastructure. We have to actually have solutions. I have the solutions to do that. Thank you very much. Mr. Brewer.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Carl Brewer. I'm a first-generation Kansan. My family moved here from Oklahoma. They were farmers in that particular area. But I started here, when I first got started, I started out as a sheet metal mechanic, working at one of the aviation companies, and I ended up being a union representative. Moving up the ladder there, I joined the military, and most recently I retired here as a captain. I trained soldiers in combat arms, meaning I commanded infantry and armored soldiers and prepared them to go to battle. And doing that, I served, actually going and getting into politics and taking that experience and that knowledge to be able to help my community. I come from a low and impoverished community as a young kid growing up. And so I understand the needs and the needs of families and communities and the things that they actually ask for. I got involved as a community activist working to improve the quality of life inside my community, and then helping others, those that could not help themselves, being the voice for them. I got involved in politics, ran for city council and won. Then I ran against a very conservative Republican in the city of Wichita, and I won 2-1. And recognizing that I had an opportunity, I challenged the Tea Party, America for Prosperity, on a regular basis. You're looking for somebody that's going to be able to provide you with leadership, somebody that's certainly been proven and certainly has a leadership and executive experience. And I want to be able to give each and every child an opportunity to get the best education they can have and live the quality of life that they choose to live. And to do that, we're going to have new leadership, individuals that are prepared to step forward and take responsibility and to be proven leaders. And I'm that person. So I'm looking forward to being able to talk to you more about my candidacy. Thank you, Carl Brewer.
Thank you. My name is Jim Ward. It is my honor and privilege to serve as the Democratic leader of the Kansas House of Representatives, and I'm running for governor to build a better Kansas. We build a better Kansas by creating jobs here at home, by partnerships between business and labor and academics to make sure that our graduates can go to work on day one and work immediately. I have to tell a quick story. Many of you heard as the caucuses. My daughter just got a job in Denver, Colorado, and I couldn't be more proud of her. But the job is in Denver, Colorado. It should be in Wichita or Overland Park or Pratt or Liberal. We need to make Kansas a destination for our children after the education. And education is a foundational block of a better Kansas. I have to tell you about Kenny. I met him in high school a couple of weeks ago, and I've been talking about the integration of technical education in high school and college and how you can take college credits in high school. And he came up, he was excited. He says, I want to be a plumber. And after I do it for a while, I want to open my own business. And his questions to me were really telling. The first one was, do you think that's too small? And I said, oh no, that is what built this state. That's exactly the kind of attitude we need. We need to reinforce kids who want to do those kinds of things. And he said, second of all, do you think that there would be any help for me to get started because I don't have a lot of money? And I believe that the state should help Kenny as much as Charles and David Koch. And under a Ward administration, the Better Kansas would do that. I believe in the Better Kansas, we can't leave anybody behind. Men, women, race, color, whatever, sexual orientation. We can't waste people. And in my Better Kansas, all of us will be working to build a better place to live. My name is Jim Ward. I look forward to the conversation.
My name is Jack Bergeson, and I'm running to be the next governor of the state of Kansas. As you know, one of the main reasons I got into this race was because I saw a large swath of the population, including a lot of members of the younger generation, were not interested in politics, and they did not care. They were like, it's just a bunch of, rich, wealthy men that speak at Washington, D.C. They don't care about me. They don't know what my life is like. And that's why I decided to get onto this race and fight on working class issues and put an emphasis on the issues of the future, because the issues of the future are much different than the issues of the past. And in order to bring bright and talented young minds into understanding politics and to running for office and getting involved in our government, I believe we have to show that all types of people can run for office and win. One of my main issues also that I saw that really made me want to run for office is the drug issue. I have seen it is a crime that we are putting people in jail for marijuana crimes. I believe that is also, especially people using it for medicine, we're putting people in jail for using medicine. I mean, what is up with that? It's insane. So not only can we do the just thing and legalize marijuana, we can also do something great for our state. By legalizing it and taxing and regulating it, we can put it back into our economy and use it to help fund our crumbling infrastructure and education system. Thank you, and I look forward to more questions.
Ms. Kelly?
I do want to say that Jack has attracted a lot of attention. Actually, the German media was here today to interview him. So, I'm Laura Kelly. I'm a state senator. I'm also a wife, a mother, and the proud daughter born into a military family. By the time I was 15, I had moved 12 times. So I decided that I wanted to set down some roots and find a place to raise my family. And Kansas was the obvious choice. It's a state defined by a stellar school system and a strong sense of community. Today, those things are at risk because of the rigid ideology of Sam Brownback and Jeff Collier. They have mortgaged our futures, and they've done that to give breaks to those who least needed them. They've treated Kansans like guinea pigs, and their failed experiment has resulted in larger classes, crumbling highways, and a stagnant economy. And all of that breaks my heart, and it makes me very angry. I've dedicated my life to fighting for kids. My very first career was working with children suffering from mental illness. Then, for 18 years, I traveled all around the state of Kansas, working to improve our public park and recreation communities, to make our communities a better place for our families and more attractive to business. As a state senator, I have secured critical funding for early childhood education, for after-school programs, and for our K-12 system. My life has not been just a resume. It has been a mission to fight for kids and to do right by them. And that's what makes me the right woman for this job at this moment. Kansans of all backgrounds get it.
We're going to start with our questions with Mr. Svaty. Our first issue is, in fact, K through 12 education in public universities. Mr. Svaty, the legislature is under pressure to meet the constitutional provisions to provide an adequate education for Kansas children.
But it isn't just K through 12 education that suffered under the Brownback administration. It was also universities. Outline the challenge that has been created in terms of how it affects Kansas, and both today and into the future, and your solution, how you propose to find a solution.
Sure, well, I think the first thing we point out is the last time the legislature passed a constitutional school finance formula that stood the time over and over and over was the 92 school finance formula, which is largely what we're going to have. Do you know why it was called the 92 school finance formula? Because it was done in 1992. Who was running the legislature and the governor's office in 1992? It was the Democrats. So you can count on us to get things done when we're running things. And I think that's the point we have to remember. If we're in charge, we can make this constitutional and we can take care of schools. I don't know exactly what the dollar amount's going to be, but it's going to be several $100 million. And the legislature that's there right now is going to have to do a lot of heavy lifting this session, and the next governor's still going to have to do heavy lifting. But we have to build coalitions, whatever we do, to finance something that's going to be pretty much like the 92 school finance formula, because that's what's fairest across the state. And then when it comes to higher education, we have to commit, and the governor must commit to those institutions that when we tell you how much money you're going to get, we're not going to make mid-year or late-year fiscal year allotments so that we leave our universities stranded. Because when they have to find 4% in March, with only a few months left in their fiscal year, that's when they have to dip into the well, and what ends up happening is tuition goes up for students. So it's a commitment. We've got a long way to go to get back into fiscal shape as a state of Kansas. It's going to take a lot of work, but at the very least, the next governor has to commit to holding ourselves to our word.
Well, certainly education is a major issue, and we have to address that issue, and of course the Constitution has mandated that. As far as the higher education, there's a number of things that we need to look at, particularly the debt issue of young people. And we need to look at some options out there in order to help them with that. One possible option is community college to be free. In repayment, they have to stay here for the equal number of years. So if the government provides you a tuition for 2 years, you have to agree to stay here for 2 years. The military has similar things for graduate education. There's no reason why we can't do that in the state. In fact, a few other states have. As far as the high school and K through 12 education process, certainly vocational education is very important. We have to fund that. Again, I'm going to come back to this special needs issue because it costs us 2 to 10 times per student to address special needs. No one is addressing why we have so many children with autism, with learning disabilities, with various different diseases. We have the technology to stop that. You think it costs money now, double the state budget, and how are we going to address that? We have to address why these children have special needs. Only 27% of them have jobs. Many of them are not employable. What are we going to do about that? That's part of the education budget that we have to address.
Ms. Brewer?
Serving as mayor of the city of Wichita, I've had an opportunity to understand, to recognize the impact, coming from Wichita. Education is as important as infrastructure, public safety, and when you start talking about growing your economy, that's important. One's just as equally important as the other. You have to have a skilled workforce, you have to have an educated workforce. So you have to invest in these young people. Our children are our most prized possession, and we treat that as if it's not. We have to change that and reprioritize, because if we're going to have a future here in the state of Kansas, we have to invest in to make sure that they have that opportunity to get that education. But then secondly, taking it on to even farther to get a better education, going in higher education, whether it be in trade school or going to a 4-year degree college. And the only way that we're going to do that is to really push and to be able to educate them and tell them how important it is. But we have to be prepared to invest in it and recognize that it's important. Our children are competing not with the people in the next state over. They're competing with the rest of the world. And the rest of the world, in third world countries, are investing in their children. They're investing in making sure that these young people get the best education that they can possibly get, but then taking it a step farther, making sure they have those opportunities, and they're competing for the jobs that our children are competing for. So invest in them and make them a priority.
Mr. Ward.
I'm glad the question combined K-12 and higher education, because I think that's the next generation. The cutting edge education is integrating high school and college, whatever experience that is. We started with technical college and high school where you can get credits in technical school as a high school student. The next generation is now we've got about 5 classes that we're looking at doing the same thing, that you in high school can begin a college career in high school and get credit. We need to have more technology. We need to have more innovation in the classroom. We need to be the laboratory of how do we do education better. It costs too much to go to higher education, whether it's technical school, community college, junior college, or the Board of Regents. It's too expensive. And under a Ward administration, it will be a priority to bring that cost down. I talked to a group of high school students about 6 months ago, and I asked, what are the biggest things that cause you stress today? Number 1, where will I go to school and will I get in? 2, how will I pay for it? And 3, how will I pay back that huge debt? Will I be able to get a job? Will I be able to buy a house? Will I be able to have children? Will I live as good as my parents and my grandparents did? That was not a problem the last generation. We can do better in Kansas. In a better Kansas, that's not their concern. They know there's an opportunity for them to pursue their God-given talent, and we will return to that under a Ward administration.
Mr. Bergeson.
I think there are 2 very important things that pop out when talking about education. One of the most important things in education is quality teachers. And what we have to look at is bringing back those quality teachers back. Alrighty, so now that we're back on track there, one of the most important things about education is quality teachers. And with what the state has been handling education, a lot of good teachers have been leaving the state or retiring, and we cannot allow that to happen. If we want our children to get an education, we have to make sure that there are teachers in the classroom who care about them. One of the more important things that I have considered is we have to look at giving a pay raise and making sure teachers have the necessary supplies and things available. So we can attract teachers back that have gone to Missouri or have gone, to Wisconsin and Minnesota. We have to bring them back here and we have to make sure that when they get back to their classroom, they have what they need to teach the next generation and keep us going. And one of the other things I'm going to bring up, I know I brought it up in my opening statement, but trust me, if we were to legalize recreational marijuana and tax and regulate it, we could use that money to go into our education system. So once we look at that, I think those are 2 of the most important things when looking at K-12 education in terms of having it funded and what needs to be done. Thank you.
Ms. Keller.
Thank you. I agree with a lot of the things that have already been said up here, but I think the one aspect of education that has not been emphasized has been that of early childhood education. I think we know, the research tells us that it's important to intervene early if we want kids to be able to go into our K-12 system ready to succeed. I've been a strong advocate for early childhood education for the 14 years that I have been in the Senate, and I will continue to do that when I become governor. I will work particularly with our business entities and create public-private partnerships. Some of the very best programs that we have in the state of Kansas are a result of bringing together the private sector and the public sector in creating these programs that provide wraparound services for our most vulnerable, most at-risk young children. Those kids are graduating from those programs, going into kindergarten, and succeeding. We know it works. We need to make more investments in that. The other thing that I think is important is teleeducation. The reality is that we have schools that are very, very far away from other populated areas, and it's difficult to recruit teachers. particularly specialists in those areas. And I think it's important that we figure out, that we develop our broadband so we can have access, and then we figure out a way to provide sophisticated courses through teleeducation. I think those are the two things, along with what everybody else has spoken about tonight.
In my opinion, K through 12 education and education in general at all levels, pre-K, higher education, is the single most important issue that faces Kansas today. There is not one issue that is not directly tied to our education. I believe our educational system should be fully funded. I believe in increasing the base aid per pupil so that schools can pay their teachers better, hire the necessary support staff, and have the programs available to them to allow our children to succeed. Another interesting part that I don't really think gets brought up a lot is addressing the methodologies in which we administer our education. Making sure that new types of classes are being introduced across the board, things that involve more critical thinking and more conversation-based learning. These are skills that I see lacking in a lot of people that are coming into the working world today. And it will be expensive. It is difficult to put a number on that, but I do believe that we can fund it, and we can do this by utilizing not just new revenue sources such as recreational marijuana, but a more progressive tax structure that places the burden on those who can afford it and allows our lower groups to prosper better. Thank you.
The next question has to do with infrastructure. Dr. Andersen, it goes to you first. With the deficits, we've seen Kansas infrastructure in decline, especially in light of diverting highway funds to pay for operating state government. Once again, explain how this affects Kansas, everyday Kansas, and the Kansas economy, and your solution, or how you propose to find a solution.
Certainly, infrastructure is one of those things that is important to everybody, and we're losing, there we go. And historically, Kansas has had great roads. And part of the problem what's being done is that we're now putting in 10-year roads, paying for it with 30-year bonds. So over time, we're getting farther and farther behind. Number two, we really need to look at the engineering specs on the quality of the roads, because much of that has declined over the past 50 years. So when we're actually going to spend money on a road, on a bridge, it needs to last. Like I said, we can't be putting in 10-year roads and paying for them for 30-year bonds. If we're going to use a 30-year bond, let's put in a 30-year road. We have in the past. We have to have an infrastructure in order to have business, in order just to have safety as well, in order to have emergency access, in order to have education access. We have to have an infrastructure. And certainly, how are we going to pay for that? That's a question we can ask about everything that we're discussing. And the bottom line is, it's been paid for in the past. There are some new potential revenue sources. One, of course, the new gaming thing. The Supreme Court's going to rule in June, July that may completely turn gaming on its head. And it will affect Kansas as far as the funding is concerned. Certainly other issues we need to look at. The bottom line is, it's unification of parties that's going to get this done.
Ms. Brewer, take us away.
Transportation and infrastructure is very important. That's part of what we use to be able to export our goods from one location to another location, from other countries, and to be able to do that. Under the Brownback administration, they have pretty much just completely demolished our transportation system, where you have communities that are responsible for repairing bridges, that communities can't afford to build bridges because limitations have been put in. Their hands are tied. We have to have good highways. We've had wonderful highways, for many years, for decades. But today we're lacking. We don't have the money to be able to do that. And so we're going to have to do some things differently. We're going to have to diversify what we actually have. We have to increase the amount of goods that we're actually transporting and sending to other locations. If we don't do this, the companies and the businesses that we have here, right here in the state of Kansas, will go someplace else that will provide that service for them and allow them to be able to do that in a much more affordable way. So we have to make sure that we have good infrastructure, and we've got to take that and make it a priority and invest in it.
Mr. Ward.
I've not only supported transportation infrastructure on a campaign trail, I've actually voted to put the money there. I went to my constituents and told them I had to raise 4/10 of a sales tax so that we could have good roads and bridges. And I've opposed every step of the way the Brownback-Collier sweep of those funds to fund their failed tax experiment. The other thing is we're too narrow just looking at roads and bridges. We need to talk about internet. Broadband, fast-speed internet across the state. We were in Emporia, Kansas last week, had a forum, and the reporters were asking questions, and I thought, what would William Allen White ask me about if this was 100 years ago? It would have been rural electrification. And we need to have the same commitment to put broadband internet across, and it's not just in rural Kansas, it's the parts of my community that are dead. The other part of infrastructure that we need to talk about is water. The most precious resource we have, we need to do more. And I think Brownback did a couple of good things. He put it on the table and said, let's talk about a 50-year plan. He got rid of use it or lose it. We need to do more to ensure that water is there, not only for agriculture, but for cities and counties all over the state. What it takes is a governor committed to that kind of economic development and building that better Kansas. And I'm that person.
Of course, infrastructure is a very important part of the state economy, as it is what we use to bring people into the state and bring our goods and services export out of the state. But one of the most important things that I have done some research on is that when there is good access to public transport, when there's good access to transportation, people's economic mobility goes way up. And that's why I'm looking at expanding rail service in the state of, passenger rail service in the state of Kansas. We need to look at bringing Amtrak back to Wichita. We need to look at getting hopefully getting a passenger line between Wichita and Kansas City and Oklahoma City. If we can get that done, we can help people, maintain jobs where it requires travel, and car travel, it's expensive. But if we have a train in there, we can make it so it's easier for people to maintain business relationships and have a stronger economy. And I think that would be a great move. And also, we have to make sure that our highways and our streets are properly taken care of, and we have to look at funding for that. So we definitely have to think about that too. But I think passenger rail is definitely, could be a big boon to the state.
I moved to Kansas about 32 years ago, and that was just before the beginning of the first of the 3 10-year comprehensive transportation plans put in place in Kansas. It was a very smart move then, be a very smart move now. The Brownback tax experiment is the reason that we're talking about this right now. With the devastating tax cuts that he imposed, we have had to sweep every nickel from every fund, including the highway fund, just to pay our bills over the past 5 years. That needs to stop. We made some progress last year. We repealed some of the tax cuts, and it's growing our revenues. But we don't know if it's enough. We need some time to let things settle down and see. But one of the things that the legislature did do this year was to put together a transportation task force that has all of the stakeholders as part of it. They will be looking at trying to find alternative revenue sources so that we can build again that comprehensive transportation approach that works so well for Kansas. There is no silver bullet here, and let us not pretend that there is. It will take a lot of work, and it'll take a lot of smart people sitting around that table to figure out, given our fiscal situation, how can we do that. But I am committed to making it work because it's important for Kansas, it's important for our economy, it's important for jobs.
Investing into infrastructure is very important to the state of Kansas. Not only does it create several high-paying jobs in the immediate vicinity of the areas in which we invest, but it also opens up those areas for new opportunities. places that wouldn't normally have access to different things. And when population moves into areas, services grow, creates opportunity. But it's more than just roads and bridges to me. Like Representative Ward has said, I support a statewide high-speed internet network. I'd like to see the state of Kansas experiment moving into public internet co-op territories, and then moving into more green energy public co-ops, things that our public can own, that not only reduce the cost of living, but make life better for those people in those areas. Another one I would like to see the state of Kansas move into, and this is something that's not very readily discussed, I don't think, is more affordable housing. Constructing more affordable housing for lower income and working class families to make their lives better. Thank you.
Well, it's official. Everyone up here believes that infrastructure spending is important. The problem, and I come back to it again in my opening statement, if we don't win, we don't put together a long-term transportation plan for this state, which means our contractors who have employees that work here in Kansas have to go out of the state to find something else to do. It means that our industries, we are a natural resource state. And as Mayor Brewer said, that then depends on us moving our products and commodities out of our borders, and the competitiveness comes down to the penny sometimes. So that means that any sort of long-term edge that we're looking for is in jeopardy if we don't win. Democrats can no longer keep gathering every year for Washington Days to talk about our policies, because they're great policies and we have great ideas. And when I was Secretary of Agriculture, I had the pleasure of serving with Deb Miller, someone I would say was one of the greatest Secretaries of Transportation we've had, because she showed how to have long-term vision. But we don't get a Secretary of Transportation if we don't win in November. So the thing we have to remember is that we agree on a bulk of these ideas, and it is complicated to put long-term decisions and long-term plans together, but we have to win or we don't get to it all.
Next question goes to Mr. Brewer. Speaking of jobs and the economy, what are the key areas that a governor can influence to provide good-paying jobs and strengthen the Kansas economy?
I love that question. Because I have to be the mayor of the largest city when this country went into the worst recession in our entire history. And that was my job. It starts at the very top, in setting the example and defining what direction we're going to do. It's the Secretary of Commerce, it's the governor's responsibility, and the leader of each one of the communities to work collectively together to come up with an identified plan. We need to be able to trade more of our goods and things that we actually have and trade to export them, whether in our particular area, since we have grain, we have agriculture, promote it, send it, sell it to other countries, and be able to do things of that nature. But take it a step further, diversify what we actually have. We have a product that's right here in the state of Kansas that grows wild, and we destroy it rather than to take it and make an opportunity out of it. And that's hemp. Let's go and look at ways of being able to utilize hemp. It doesn't require a lot of water resources that we actually have. And thirdly, let's look at legalization of marijuana. You see what the other states are doing, especially the north of us, and the west of us. Why not create an environment where we can actually generate additional tax base here in the state of Kansas and diversify what we actually have? But leadership has to be strong, and leadership has to step forward and say, oh, by the way, I'm going to take responsibility of growing this economy here in Kansas, and I'm going to make sure that we're winners and we're successful.
Mr. Ward.
As I've had the opportunity to travel the state over the last 4 or 5 years, I talk to businesses, big, small, medium-sized, and over I hear this comment: I need qualified work. I need workers who can go to work on the first day and get things done for me. As I talk to people coming out of college, or technical college, or even high school, they're desperate for jobs. I believe there's a role for a governor who can bridge that gap. Bring educators, labor, employers in a room and talk about what do you need, Mr. Employer, Mrs. Employer? What kind of skills are you seeing our kids don't have when they come to work? What can we do in academics to make sure that happens? And labor, what can we do to provide jobs? Also, we have a president who just wants to start a trade war. The first thing I, the governor, is try to educate him that understand we sell airplanes in Kansas and we sell them all over the world and we want to keep doing it. We sell commodities all over the world. It's a key component of our future, and you're messing with our economy by what you're doing. Those are the kinds of practical tools. But remember, Kenny, I want a state that says that Kenny can get what he needs from his Department of Commerce just as much as Charles and David Koch. It's time for the 1% to get only their fair share and not the whole pie. And under my economy, that will happen.
Mr. Bergeson.
You know, my family owns a small restaurant in Wichita, Biz Burgers and Bottles. If you live in Wichita, I'd recommend you stop by. It's pretty good. But I think, I'm not going to get into that, but I'm going to use this as a point to talk about, you know, my parents own the restaurant. They have employers, and we have to sit down. We always have to think about, you know, paying our taxes and all that, and running a business. We have to think about all that kind of stuff. And being involved in the business has made me realize there are things that the government can do to make it easier for employers to hire and to operate, to make it easier for small businesses to get started. I think the process of starting a business is entirely too difficult. We're average working people. It took us, 6 to 9 months just to get everything organized and, the right type of organization and all the funding. We should, I'm honestly interested, we should look at having subsidies to starting small businesses. Because if we can make it so more people can have their own business and not be reliant on a larger employer, if we can have more people start their own businesses and be in charge of their own destiny, that's going to be very important. But we have to make sure that there is less red tape for starting a business, because I think entrepreneurship is very important and will help to keep our Kansas moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I think first and foremost, we need to remember that schools are really the biggest economic driver of the state of Kansas. We need to reinvest in our schools from early childhood through higher education. That's where we'll get the trained workforce, that's where we'll get the educated people, and that's where we'll draw young people. We also have to expand Medicaid. We have 150,000 people who have no access to affordable health care. But even beyond that, if we'd expanded Medicaid, we would have brought into this state over $2.5 billion that has gone back to Washington, D.C. and distributed to other states to use for their folks. It would have created thousands upon thousands of jobs. Then the other thing I would do, if you remember when we had the Bioscience Authority, it was a brainchild of some very smart legislators who put that together in 2004. That Bioscience Authority was the reason that we have NBAP in Manhattan now. That's a $billion project that has created, Manhattan has exploded. They've brought in other industry and whatnot as a synergy with the Bioscience Authority. We need to recreate structures like that bring smart, big-paying jobs into our state. We need to put that kind of stuff together again, too.
On this subject, I have a couple points I'd like to make. Number one, as has been said, and it's going to be repeated at least 100 more times tonight, is investing more into our education, and specifically into people that are going to be coming out of school over the next 4 years, and making sure our public universities have programs dedicated at low cost or no cost to growing industries, things like cybersecurity, regenerative medicine, things that are coming, and we know they're coming, and we should be at the forefront of that. With the solar panel explosion over the past several years, Kansas gets as much sun as California. We could have been at the forefront of that. We chose not to be by ignoring it. So when you want to make better jobs, the best thing a governor can do is not ignore opportunities. Other things that we can do at the forefront, make the jobs we have better. Better workers' benefits, paid maternity, paternity leave, both. 6 months. It's a very important time in a child's life is to make sure the parents are there with them in the developmental stages. Increasing the minimum wage, starting up to 10 in my opinion, with incremental increases every year. Expanding healthcare. I favor a single-payer healthcare system. Whether or not that's possible in the state of Kansas, that remains to be seen. I would need to do some more research, but I know it will come someday, and it will reduce the cost significantly for medicine for everyone in the state of Kansas. Everybody deserves healthcare as a right, and we have to put our foot forward on it and begin making that happen. Thank you.
Day one of my administration, I reinstate the civil protections for LGBTQ state employees. And that's my economic development plan. You may ask, why is that your economic development plan? I'll tell you why. Because we have to invest in research and higher education, because that spins out entrepreneurial activity. We have to invest in a developing workforce. But all of the tax policies we put in place, all of the money we spend chasing businesses around the country cannot change the fact that we have the perception, both within and outside the state, that we are headed backward. And the next administration has to send the message that the state that fought to be free is back. That the state that gave women the right to vote long before the rest of the country did is back. The state of Brown versus Board of Education is back. And we can do that on day one by reinstating those civil protections and use it as a tool to say, this is a state that is open and ready for your businesses, your ideas, your dreams. Come here and bring your families and make them happen.
Thank you, Josh. I think you're absolutely right on with that. The economy issue, of course, is really the number one thing in order to be able to fund anything else that we talk about, whether you want to talk about healthcare, education, infrastructure, the environmental issues, anything you want to talk about. Jobs and the economy are the fundamental thing. Agriculture is the number one driver in the state of Kansas. We talk about worrying about the international trade in order to save us. In other words, we're looking at somebody else to bail us out. We have the technology, I've taught that technology for 30 years, on how to turn agriculture around in this state for a number of issues. One, increase farm profit. Number two, make Kansas carbon neutral in 5 years. Number three, cut our water use by 50%. That is technology in the soil. We're not talking about pie in the sky. We have the statistics to prove it. In addition to that, you want to talk about having education and having a trained workforce, you better figure out why we have 26% of our children with special needs, and soon up to 50% in the next 10 to 15 years if we don't address that. We have the technology, we know what the cause is, we have to have the guts to do something about it.
The next question goes to Mr. Ward. It's on healthcare affordability. While healthcare is also a federal issue, what can we do at the state level to ensure that Kansans have access to health insurance and affordable healthcare?
Thank you. I'm going to tell you about Gary. Gary called me about 3 years ago. His brother had just had a massive stroke and was paralyzed on one side of his body. He had one of the good guy employers who had held his job open so that he could continue to have health care. But it was over. They needed to fill the position, and Gary was calling me as his state representative to say, is there anything the state can do to help my brother? He's worked his entire life, never asked for anything, paid his share of the taxes, went to school, was in the PTA. Is there anything our state can do to help him? You know what the answer is in Kansas today for a single person? Nothing. That's because we haven't expanded Medicaid to give help to people. I introduced the first bill. It will be job one under my administration to get that done. It's time we expand Medicaid in Kansas and help Gary's brother. We also can do other things. Telemedicine is a way that we can expand the reach of healthcare that is in the urban areas to rural and suburban areas. We need to talk about the scope of practice so that we can get more medical care in more places. And we need to hold insurance companies accountable that they charge fair rates and don't rate our constituents. And we can do that if we're committed to that proposition that everyone should have health care. Nobody should worry about going to the doctor because they can't afford it.
Mr. Bergeson.
This issue is very personal to me, and it's why it will be one of my top priorities if I'm elected. Our family has always had a hard time. When I was first born, my dad had a good job, and we were able to obtain healthcare that way. But when he lost his job in the recession, we were able to afford it for a while. But even with the rate hikes under Obamacare, we have struggled. I don't think we currently have health insurance right now. So this is a forefront of what I'm doing. First of all, we need to expand Medicaid so more low-income people can make sure that they have health insurance. But on top of that, we need to look at another solution. I am supportive of the Nevada, what I call the Nevada plan that was tried in Nevada last year, creating a public option under the Obamacare exchanges, so those that are not eligible for Medicaid, but yet cannot afford the private insurance on the exchanges can still get health care until we pass the national single-payer health care system. Thank you.
Ms. Keller.
I think number one, the most important thing that we can do is to expand Medicaid, and I think that's been discussed. But I think we also have to realize that a lot of the medical cost issues are really controlled at the federal level. You know, the fact of the matter that we cannot negotiate drug prices is huge. We're banned from doing that. We have to buy at whatever cost the pharmaceuticals decide they want to give it to us. That's a federal issue, and we need to press our congressional delegation to make that difference in that kind of program. There are other things in terms of insurance regulation, insurance policies. They're also going to be federal that we're going to have to push for. But until we make healthcare affordable, health insurance affordable, it'd be very difficult to do this. We need to look at the reimbursement policies for medical procedures. You know, right now it is upside down. Your family practitioner gets reimbursed very little money, as opposed to the guy who sticks something down your throat to do a bronchoscopy, or a radiologist who looks at your lungs. That's where the money is in that, and that is why we have so many procedures being done, and that's what's raising the cost of healthcare so significantly. That must change, but unfortunately that really is a federal issue and one that would be very difficult for us to change here on a state level. So I think we need to work with our state, other states, other governors to put the pressure on the Congress and on the federal administration to start working towards those changes that would make a real difference in the cost of health care.
Mr. Klingenberg.
A couple things about the issue of health care that I think should be discussed. Number one, 2/3 of American families across the nation are within $1,000 of bankruptcy. The average cost of an ER visit is close to $1,000. So let me bring up something a little personal for me. My insurance plan only covers me to visit my primary care physician. Otherwise, I have to pay my copay and then 20% of whatever's left over. That is not health care. That is, you get treatment when it's okay for me to tell you you can get treatment. So if I were to get majorly sick on the weekend, that's coming out of my pocket. Now insurance companies are allowed to deny coverage on a, quote, non-emergency visit to the ER. Why is that? That's something that I think we can change at the state level. One thing, like so many before said, Medicaid. We can expand it as a stopgap in order to help alleviate the burden, but I believe that we can have a single-payer public option in the state of Kansas as long as we're willing to work towards it. Thank you.
Mr. Svaty.
expand Medicaid. 2, we need to fully invest in our medical schools, particularly those that are training our doctors to go out into rural areas. 3, we need to look at those hospitals in rural areas that are doing creative, new ideas to attract doctors to their communities and replicate that statewide. But 4, and as governor, I would fight for this. I believe in a lot of what the Affordable Care Act did, and it brought a lot of new people into the system. But it left the middle in a precarious situation. Those individuals, particularly farmers, myself being one of them, that self-insure, or small businesses that self-insure, are now caught in the middle. And we've seen premium increases by 30%, 30%, 30% year over year. And even though the bulk of this is a federal issue, Kansas needs a governor fighting for a way to collect or pool the risk of everyone in that middle, to give them some leverage against the insurance industry so that they're not stranded by themselves, because that's what's happening right now. They have no leverage whatsoever, and they have nowhere to go because they want to be insured, and they have to carry that insurance coverage, and they want to do the right thing, but every year it's 30% increase. We can't keep doing that.
Well, healthcare is one of those areas that I do know a fair amount about. And as I said, I deal with Medicaid and Medicare on a regular basis. And I have to kind of chuckle because I thought Democrats were really interested in helping the common person. When you expand Medicaid as it is, you have to understand a large percentage of that money actually goes to corporate and out of the state. We have to first overhaul this crappy, broken system. We spend $8,700 per person in the state of Kansas on Medicaid. Australia spends $4,200. Estonia spends $3,600. Don't tell me that we're just going to expand that and let more private industry have that money. You have to first deprivatize the system. Get that public money back under public control. By doing so, we then are able to extend the current budget to many, many, many more, up to 370,000 people, not 150,000, 370,000 people, everyone below 36,000 in income. I know how to solve this problem. I have officially been involved with the Air Force to evaluate foreign medical systems. I know how they operate. It's not as simple to say it's a single-payer system. It is a dual system. It's public and private, combined both. It's going to be a complex system, but it is not impossible to solve. Mr. Brewer.
Well, the first thing we have to do is there's no doubt, and it doesn't take a rocket science to figure out that we have to expand Medicaid. And we've done an injustice to the people here in Kansas, people here that live here. But we have to do something and create an environment where everyone can get an opportunity to get health care. And when I'm talking about getting health care, I'm not talking about health care where they have one incident, they're in the hospital for a couple of weeks, and they're filing bankruptcy 6 months later. I'm talking about health care where they can continue, they can have productive lives, they can continue on, and they don't lose everything that they have and don't have to file bankruptcy. Now, everybody up here made some very valid points, and they're all pretty close, being accurate, and I'm in agreement with them. But it's going to require a lot of work. It's going to require a lot of work, not from the person that's going to be governor, but it's going to require a lot of work from each and every one of you that's sitting out there. Because that governor is going to have the support of the legislators and each and every one of you, for those people that are in Washington that impose these various different laws that tie our hands and don't allow us to function the way that we should be functioning. It's time for them to come home or go to another state. But that's left up to us to make that decision. And the only way we can do that is it's going to start right here, what you see that's getting ready to happen here this year during this election. So we're going to have to work together.
Next question goes to Mr. Bergeson. Mr. Bergeson, this is on social services. Republicans provide many arguments against funding social services. What will you do as governor to answer those arguments and provide services Kansans need?
think it's very important that the government of Kansas looks out for the people of Kansas, and whether that be, we gotta make sure we're, stuff like, more generic stuff like food stamps, we gotta make sure we're looking for stuff like that. Because if we allow people to, the social safety net is there to help those that are the most downtrodden, that are the kind of people that most society looks usually down, but we cannot do that. We cannot look down on those people. We have to make sure the social safety net is there to help them rise up and once again rise back up into society, and we can all function as one cohesive society. I think that's the most important. So we have to say that to answer an argument. What we have to say is, if we're just going to not fund them, we're just going to continue to push these people under the rug, which is morally wrong. But if we give them a hand up, we can reintegrate everyone back to society and help everyone get a leg up. I think that's the most important thing we have to look at. So that's really my answer to how I would answer such an argument, because I believe it's just morally wrong to let people just go by just because people say that they're not working hard enough. I'm like, if most people, it doesn't even pay enough to live on. If you're on, people need this help. If they are asking for it, they need it, and we have to make sure it is available to them. And I will work hard to make sure that there is enough available. Thank you.
Ms. Keller.
Thank you. It has been painful to spend the last 7 years, particularly the last 5 years, in the state Senate and the state legislature as a whole, because we have watched this administration systematically attack our most vulnerable, our disabled, and our elderly. They have gone in and reduced benefits to a point, reduced access to benefits to a point, that we now have a record number of children in our foster care system. You can't take away a very fragile safety net from a family and expect them to be able to handle their children when their children provide problems. So we've got that. We're starting to address that. The legislature last year set up the Child Welfare Task Force, and we are convening. We've done that for about 5 months, and we'll continue to convene until next January. And we're starting to set up a system of reform. Fortunately, we have a new secretary, so we've been able to start implementing some reforms now in that system. Administratively, but we'll continue to work with the experts that we've brought around the table to really do a comprehensive reform. And I think we need to take a look. I think Medicaid expansion goes in here too, because if these folks don't have access to health care, how in the world do we expect them to stay healthy enough to work?
I think a lot of these programs are extraordinarily important to working class families, especially when it comes to something like Medicaid or Medicare, things that they require in order to, quote, stay afloat. So one thing I think definitely needs to be examined is what I like to call the net negative. I know plenty of people who are on a program and who would like to get off at some point in time, but they're losing more getting off than they're gaining. We need to make sure that the aid that we're giving out goes to those who need it in the amounts that are appropriate. And especially focused on things like reducing the cost just to live. A lot of lower income families are renting their houses. We need to make sure that that rent is affordable for them. Because it is just insane to me to think that a 3-bedroom house is going to cost you $1,500 a month. There are not a lot of people that can afford that. So these programs are very important. We have to make sure they're funded and make sure the net is there in a productive way that helps more people than it's actually hurting. Thank you.
Normally, as Democrats, we have to spend a lot of time convincing our Republican colleagues to invest in social services. Sadly, they have deteriorated so fast under the Brownback administration that we actually don't have to do that much convincing, because the tragedy and the sadness is omnipresent. We see it every single day, whether it's lost foster care children or incidents at our corrections facilities. We all recognize, Democrats and Republicans, that state government is in trouble. So number one, under my administration, we appoint Kansans to run these cabinet level positions who believe and care for the people that they are serving. Number two, we invest in an independent state auditor that's looking over our shoulders to make sure that what we're doing is correct for the long term. And number three, we set the tone for state government service that we invite people back to choose it as a lifelong career, because as a former cabinet level secretary, I discovered the tremendously dedicated civil servants that came to work every single day trying to make state government better, and they have hemorrhaged in the last 8 years. They're gone. We have to rebuild it. It means paying them appropriately, respecting them, and creating an environment where they want to turn this into a career so they can serve Kansans, so we can demonstrate to everyone this is how government should work.
Thank you, Josh. Those are excellent things. I deal with a lot of social services issues every single day with my patients. I have a number of patients that are, as I said, on Medicaid, but also on various different social service things. Many of them are federal. And the thing about it is that we really need to understand, someone making $1,000 a month is not getting rich. And the unfortunate thing is that that's really never pointed out. And I hear about all this fight. Oh, we're going to fight for this and fight for that. I'm a colonel in the Air Force, ladies and gentlemen. I don't fight Americans. We need to unite. You want to bring Republicans to the table? Then what we talk about are issues that are very important to both. So we talk about children. And we show the actual statistics. In my opinion, we ought to allow people who are on government assistance to make at least 100% of what they're making. Because like I said, somebody on $1,000 a month is not getting rich. You want to get them off from welfare, then you allow them to work, you don't punish them to work. The other thing is about social services, think about it for a moment. If only 27% of special needs people have a job today, that's going to only continue to increase. What are you going to do when 50% of them are not even employable? That's something that Republicans have autistic children as well. Republicans have developmental delay children as well. That brings everybody to the table when you discuss those issues.
Mr. Brewer.
Well, certainly social services are important to each and every community and to the state of Kansas. And if we lived in a perfect world, we wouldn't have it. But we don't live in a perfect world. And we have families and communities with those types of needs. You know, there's no reason here in the state of Kansas how we could be missing 70 children and we have no idea where our children are at. That would be unacceptable, and we should not stand for it, not one bit. If something happens, we should have a system in place. If something happens and one of those children is in foster care or someplace, then within 24 hours, then that should be reported, and we should all be aware of it, and we should all be looking. Thing is, when we start looking at additional social services, whether it be food or the other assistance, you know, those are some of the things that are important. And instead of going, we privatize these things, and then they take off some of the tax dollars that we actually pay in to be able to help take care of our neighbors. We can do this internally, and we can do it inside. We've got to bring those things back inside, internally, and then have oversight as to where those dollars are actually going, and make sure that the right families are getting these dollars, and they're getting the help that they need.
I believe we should go back to rewarding work. We did a lot of things in the 80s and 90s to empower people who were working at the bottom end. We raised the minimum wage. We should do it again. It's too low, $7.25. You should not work 40 hours a week and live in poverty in Kansas. We used to do things things like the earned income tax credit, the child care tax credit. We used to do things that empowered families that were struggling outside the social service network. Our union friends already get this through their apprentice programs to build people's ability to have gainful employment in good jobs, in careers. We should invest in those kinds of things. The reward for work. I believe those families that need help should get it. That's why I've opposed Brownback's administration's attack on Medicaid for 7 years. I didn't think CanCare would work. I didn't think 3 private insurance companies could run a program that provides services to our most vulnerable would make it, and I was right, unfortunately. I fought to carve out the disabilities community from that program. I will fight to carve them out again. It is the right thing to do. We should respect those people and provide them the resources that they can have a quality life. I think the idea that we take food away from poor children and call it efficiencies is immoral, and we won't do it under a Warren administration.
Thank you. Now we're going to have 2 minutes for each of the candidates to give their closing remarks, starting with Ms. Kelly.
Well, I want to thank you all, each and every one of you, for coming here today, and I do want to thank the party for putting this event together. It's a unique event for Democrats to actually have a primary. So, you know, Kansas has been through a lot this past 7 years. Think of our state motto at Aspera for Aspera. We can overcome these challenges. And it'll start with this election. You know, we must unite to win in November. I came to Kansas 32 years ago because of the opportunities that were available to my young family. Quality jobs, stellar schools, and that strong sense of community. Those things are all at risk at this point. If we want to rebuild our state, if we want our young people to stay here and to raise their families here, we must invest in them and we must provide opportunities for them. It has been my lifelong mission to do right by our kids. And I think that's what makes me the right woman for this job at this time. We have a unique opportunity this year. Many of us have been fighting Sam Brownback, Jeff Collier, and Chris Kobach for a very long time. And if we unite, we can beat Chris Kobach or Jeff Collier and Greg Orman and get Kansas back on track. Kansans want and need a leader who will bring us together and to make our state the best place for our families and for our future generations. That is exactly what I plan to do. I want to be your governor. I'm uniquely qualified to lead this state at this point in its history. I have the experience, I have the skill set, I have the temperament, and I have the relationships to get the job done. And I'm the only candidate who can beat Chris Kobach or Jeff Collier and Greg Orman. Thank you.
Mr. Bergeson, we're going to start next with you for the closing statement.
Ready? I think one of the most important thing in this campaign is that we have to unite everyone and show that politics is not just about those in power. It is about every single one of us, and I will continue to fight for those issues. Now, I'm just going to go on to a couple of other things. First, if you want to read more about my platform or more about me in this campaign, you can go to jackforgovernor.nationbuilder.com so you can read more about our platform if you're interested. Also, I'd like to state one policy position that I'm very supportive of that I did not get a chance to bring up in the forum. I am supportive of ending the food sales tax and replacing it with a luxury goods tax. So those that pay their parents, so those that pay
Mr. Ward.
If you want to see full-throttled conservatism in Kansas, then I'm your man. That's Chris Kobach. Jeff Collier's been governor, and the first thing he proposed was a constitutional amendment to prohibit women from being able to exercise their constitutional rights about their health care and their body's reproductive services. The stakes, and today, if you read the Capital Journal, you're going to see that Jeff Collier thinks the best idea for making third grade math safer is to put more guns in elementary schools. Or if you're not angry yet, read the other article where he can't decide if it's all right to discriminate in Kansas because of who you love. Those are the stakes of our election. The thing that we need to do is, you've had an opportunity to see the 7 of us talk today. Who has the experience? I believe firmly that if you want to know what someone's going to do in the future, look at what they've done in the past. Look at their record. See how they have stood up when times were tough, when we had 28 in the Kansas House, and Sam Brownback had all of the opportunity. That is how you will determine who has the aspirational goals for our state. Leadership is the key word. Who will provide leadership to regenerate state government? Appoint people who are committed to the goals of helping and doing the roles, of, whether it be in agriculture or DCF or KDAD, that they believe in the service that provided that opportunity. Who can be Chris Kobach? Who do you want standing on that stage on September 5th defending our options? Because that's the stakes that we face. Do we go backwards? Or do we build a better Kansas? I've outlined a whole series of ideas that will improve our state to bring us all to a better place at the end of 4 years, that we're proud to be Kansas. We're proud we survived the Brownback years, and we are going to continue to move forward.
Many of you have heard my resume. Former mayor of the city of Wichita, the largest city in the state of Kansas. The largest industry that generates revenue for the state of Kansas. We have more trade than anyone. You're talking about a city with the largest law enforcement agency and public safety area. Somebody that served in the military. Then someone that went and worked in corporate America. I've demonstrated that I have the leadership experience, I have the knowledge, I have the background, I have the passion, and recognize that the buck stops at the very top. Whoever's at the top, that's the person that's responsible. What you need is someone that's willing to do that. But someone that when you feel pain, that you're gonna feel, that they're gonna feel your pain. Someone that's concerned whenever your family is in need or you don't have health care. Someone that's going to make sure that your rights are not going to be violated, you're not going to be discriminated against, and if somebody that will put their foot down and say, this will not be tolerated, not here. But somebody that will extend a hand and tell others in other cities and other states that you are welcomed here. Individuals that want to make sure that families stay together. That's what you're looking for in a person that's in the governor. Someone that's going to provide you leadership, not someone that's going to give you a lot of rhetoric, a lot of conversation, and somebody pat you on the back and tell you, we'll get this next year. You need somebody that's going to be willing to fight that. And when there's something wrong, fix it immediately. But the other portion is making sure that that person is holding everyone accountable, and we're explaining to you what's going on and what's happening, and making sure you know the people that are working for you, being us as policymakers, know what's happening and what's going on and how we're spending your money. You need Carl Brewer as the next governor of Kansas. There's a clear defining difference between Chris Kobach and I.
I dare say that every person in this room is probably going to vote Democrat for governor. That's nice. You still lose the race. You have to bring in independents and moderate Republicans in order to win the state. In order to do that, you actually have to engage, not fight, you have to engage issues of moderates, independents, Republicans. That's the only way we're going to win. That's also the only way that we're going to get anything done in the legislature. One problem that Kansans and Americans have had is sick and tired of standard politics. Let's just increase, let's just expand a current broken system. Doesn't matter if we have to spend more money. Why not overhaul things with the same budget? That's how you're going to bring moderate Republicans to the table. Not just, first of all, talking about spending more money. How do we actually make the program work better? As a colonel in the Air Force, I'm the only one here that has senior leadership, professional education, and training. I know how to negotiate two sides. I know how to bring them together. I know the issues that are really important. You want to talk about water issues? It's also a water quality issue. We have mercury in a lot of water. We have pesticides in a lot of water. We need to first clean that up. Number two, we need to stop that. I know how to do that and still keep the farmers profitable. We have to address education. We also have to address why are we having so much more childhood cancer and so much more developmental delay. I am the person who understands these things factually and how to solve those problems. I'm Dr. Arden Andersen. I appreciate your being here today, and I ask for your support.
I started coming to these Washington days when I was 22 years old. I had won a seat in a Republican district in central Kansas, and they were fun then. We had speakers like Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, Claire McCaskill. They were a great time. I want those days back. And I look out and I see elected representatives, both current and former, and I want to say I want to campaign for you all around the state. When I came into the legislature, there were 45 members of the Democratic caucus. We represented all or part of 44 or 45 of the counties in the state. There's now 40 members of the caucus. They only represent 14 counties of the state in Kansas. We have to expand our reach if we intend to win. But most important, this election cycle is a generational shift. I don't care who wins the Republican primary. I don't care if Greg Orman runs or doesn't run. We can demonstrate that when Democrats are energized and when we're excited and when we have the messaging to show people that what's happening at the federal level and what's happened at the state level cannot go on, we can win no matter who else is running in the state of Kansas, and that's what I intend to do. I'm Joshua Svaty. It's joshuasvaty.com. Please visit there and join our campaign to win back Kansas. Thank you.
I want to start my closing remarks with a special thanks to the Kansas Democratic Party and the people here in this room for being extraordinarily receptive of all of our respective campaigns. It is awesome to be a part of this party that is so accepting that even somebody like me could be standing up here on the stage voicing my opinions. For me, as governor, I would be a leader. I have many years of management experience and territorial experience. But my overall goal, summed up in one sentence, is to make Kansas a beacon that the world will look at and say, we could be like that. That's the goal. That's my perspective. I'll be around if you have any more questions for me. My name is Robert Klingenberg, and I want to be your governor. Thank you.
$12:59. We're right on time. Can you believe that? Thank all of you. I'd like to ask all of our wonderful, brilliant candidates to stand, and I'd like all of you to show your appreciation. Thank you very much.